The sound of falling rocks echoed in the darkness, and silence followed. The human soldier opened his eyes slowly. Dust filled his lungs, and his head was heavy with pain. He tried to move, but a sharp ache in his leg forced him to stop. The place around him was dark, cold, and broken. Pieces of metal, stone, and fire marks told him what had happened. The bunker had collapsed after the last attack. He reached for his belt, searching for a light. His fingers found a small device, and with a trembling hand he switched it on. A weak beam of light cut through the dust. The walls were cracked, and the ceiling above him looked ready to fall again. He could not see the exit. He realized with horror that he was trapped underground. The soldier's throat burned with thirst. His canteen was empty. The small packet of food in his pocket was already gone during the first night. He counted his breaths. Every second reminded him of his weakness. He was a trained fighter, a man used to war, but nothing had prepared him for dying slowly in the dark. Then a sound came. A faint, soft sound, breathing, not his own. He froze. His hand reached for the broken knife strapped to his boot. Slowly, he moved the light toward the sound. In the corner of the ruined bunker under a piece of metal, he saw movement. A figure was curled up, small, shaking. As the light touched the figure, two glowing eyes opened. The soldier's chest tightened. It was not human. The figure pushed the metal aside with weak arms. A young alien girl lay there, her skin pale and covered with dust. Her eyes were large, glowing faintly in the dark, and her hair floated around her face like silver threads. She looked frightened, like a child who had lost everything. The soldier's heart raced. She was the enemy. Her kind had fought against humans for years. He remembered the battles, the losses, the hatred. His hand gripped the knife tighter, but then he saw her trembling hands. Her lips were dry, her breathing shallow. She was just as weak as him, maybe weaker. She looked at him with fear, but also with the same desperation that lived inside him. They were both prisoners of the same collapsed world. The silence between them grew heavy. The soldier lowered his knife slowly. "You're trapped too," he whispered, his voice rough from thirst. The alien girl did not answer, but her eyes followed his every move. She tried to sit up but failed. Her body fell back against the broken floor. The soldier realized she would not survive long like this. Neither would he. He turned off the light to save power, and in the dark he thought about his choices. He could treat her as an enemy, leave her to die and wait for his own end. Or he could try something impossible, work with her. Hours passed. The bunker was silent except for the sound of their breathing. The soldier thought he heard whispers in the shadows, the voice of death calling for him. His stomach growled, his lips cracked. He tried to remember the stars, the sky above, but only darkness filled his mind. Then a soft sound broke the silence. The alien girl spoke for the first time. Her voice was faint, musical, but broken. No food, no water. She looked at him with tired eyes, as if asking a question without words. The soldier nodded slowly. None left. They sat in silence again, but now it was different. They were no longer strangers in the dark. They were two lives bound by the same cruel fate. The soldier leaned against the wall and closed his eyes, trying to save energy. But sleep would not come. His body shook with weakness. Every moment he wondered if this was his last breath. From the other side, he heard the alien girl whisper something in her language. He could not understand the words, but he felt the meaning. It was a prayer, a cry for help to whatever gods she believed in. He looked at her glowing eyes, dim now with exhaustion, and for the first time, he felt something other than fear or hate. He felt pity. The bunker creaked again, a deep rumble from above, as if the world wanted to bury them both forever. Dust rained from the ceiling. The soldier crawled closer to her without thinking, protecting her small frame with his own body as stones fell around them. When the shaking stopped, the girl opened her eyes in surprise. She whispered one word in broken human tongue. "Why?" The soldier did not answer. He himself did not know why. Maybe it was instinct. Maybe it was something deeper. As the silence returned, he understood one thing. They were not enemies anymore. They were survivors, and survival meant they had to stay together. The darkness grew heavier, but in that darkness a fragile thread of trust was born. The silence of the bunker felt endless. Hours turned into a blur, and the air was heavy with dust. The human soldier sat against the cold wall, his light flickering weakly in his hand. Across the broken floor, the alien girl lay curled up, breathing slowly. They had spoken no more words, but the weight of their shared suffering hung between them like a silent chain. The soldier watched her carefully. Her glowing eyes closed and opened as if she was fighting sleep. He wondered who she was. A soldier? A refugee? A child of war caught in the wrong place? She looked too young to fight, yet too strong to die without a fight. He touched his injured leg. Pain shot through him, but he clenched his teeth. He needed to stay awake. His training told him never to trust the enemy, but his heart whispered something else. Alone, he had no chance. Together, maybe there was hope. Finally, he broke the silence. His voice was rough, almost hesitant. "What's your name?" The alien girl stared at him, confused. Her lips trembled before she spoke. "Lyra," she whispered, her voice fragile but clear. "Lyra," he repeated as if testing the sound. "I'm Daniel." For a moment, her glowing eyes softened. They were no longer nameless enemies trapped underground. They had names now, and names carried weight. Daniel tried to move closer, dragging himself with his arms. His wounded leg slowed him down, but eventually, he reached the broken space near her. Lyra's body tensed, ready to defend herself, but he raised his empty hands. "I won't hurt you," he said simply. "We're both trapped. We need each other." She hesitated, her alien features unreadable, then gave a faint nod. Daniel pulled out his light and looked around. The bunker was larger than he thought, but every path was blocked by stone and twisted metal. No exit, no food, no water. He felt his chest tighten. Survival would not be easy. Lyra shifted, pulling something from beneath the rubble, a small metal case, dented and dusty. She opened it slowly. Inside were thin ration packs, clearly alien-made. Daniel's eyes widened. She had supplies, but Lyra pushed the case toward him and shook her head. "Empty," she whispered. Her hands showed the last packet already torn open. Nothing was left. Daniel's stomach twisted. He almost laughed, a broken sound. "So we're both starving," he muttered. Lyra hugged the empty case to her chest. Her silver hair fell over her face, hiding her expression. Daniel realized she was just as scared as he was. Enemy or not, she was a prisoner of the same darkness. He leaned his head back against the wall and closed his eyes. The bunker creaked again, reminding them both how fragile their prison was. One more collapse could bury them alive. Lyra broke the silence this time. "Your people." "Kill mine," she said slowly, her words broken but sharp. Daniel opened his eyes and looked at her. He wanted to argue, to tell her that her people had started the war, that humans had only defended themselves. But what good were such words here in the dark? He sighed instead. "Your people kill mine too." Her eyes met his, and for the first time he saw pain in them. Not anger, not hatred, but pain. She had lost someone, maybe many, just like him. For a long moment they sat in silence, two enemies bound by sorrow. Finally, Daniel spoke again. "If we fight, we die faster. If we help each other, maybe we live long enough to see the sky again." Lyra studied him, her glowing eyes searching for lies. Slowly, she gave a small nod. A strange sense of relief washed over Daniel. An agreement, fragile but real. They began to share small things. Daniel told her about Earth's forests, tall green trees that touched the sky. Lyra listened with wide eyes, whispering words of wonder. In return, she told him about her homeworld, where rivers of light flowed under the night sky and mountains sang with wind. Her voice carried music even in weakness. For the first time since the collapse, Daniel felt the weight on his chest ease. She was still alien, still strange, but she was no longer just the enemy. She was Lyra, and she was his only companion in the endless dark. But hope was fragile. Their bodies weakened with every passing hour. Daniel's head spun and his throat burned. He tried to hide his pain, but Lyra noticed. She crawled closer, her silver hair brushing against the dust, and placed her small hand on his arm. Her voice was soft but firm. "I help," Daniel frowned. "How? We have nothing left." Lyra's glowing eyes held something mysterious, something he did not yet understand. She hesitated as if holding back a secret. But before she could say more, the bunker groaned again, a deep growl of shifting earth. Dust rained down and a loud crash echoed in the distance. Both froze, hearts pounding. Something was moving in the ruins. Daniel gripped his broken knife. Lyra's eyes glowed brighter in fear. The silence that followed was even heavier than before. Enemies or allies, they both knew the truth. Survival was no longer just about hunger and thirst. Something else was alive in the dark with them, and together they would face it or die. The bunker grew colder with each passing hour. The weak light from Daniel's device flickered like a dying star, casting long shadows on the cracked walls. He sat close to the alien girl, Lyra, listening to her uneven breathing. Hunger had become a sharp knife inside his stomach, twisting with every movement. His throat was dry as sand. Daniel knew the truth. Without food and water, he had only days left. His soldier's training taught him to push limits, but even the strongest body needed something to survive. And here, there was nothing. He looked at Lyra. She lay against the wall, her glowing eyes half closed. Her thin hands trembled as she pulled her knees to her chest. She was no better than him, maybe worse. The war had taken much from both of them, and now this bunker would take the rest. A sudden rumble shook the ground. Dust rained from above. Daniel raised his arm to shield his face. For a moment, he thought the whole bunker would collapse. But it stopped, leaving silence heavier than before. Then a sound reached him, a soft whimper. He turned. Lyra was clutching her stomach, whispering something in her language. Her silver hair covered her face. Daniel crawled closer, concern pushing him past caution. "What's wrong?" he asked, his voice rough. Lyra opened her glowing eyes. They shimmered with pain and fear. "Weak," she whispered. "No strength. But I can help you," Daniel frowned.
"Help me? How?"
There's nothing left. Her lips trembled. For a long moment, she seemed torn between silence and revelation. Finally, she whispered words that made his heart stop. "My body, it makes food." Daniel froze, unsure if he had heard right. "What do you mean?" She looked away, shame burning in her expression. Her cheeks glowed faintly under the weak light. "My people, when danger comes, mothers make milk. Strong, full of life. It keeps young alive when nothing else remains." Daniel's breath caught. The meaning struck him hard. Milk. Her milk. At first, disbelief filled him. He stared at her, searching her glowing eyes for any sign of a lie. But she held his gaze, steady and serious despite her weakness. This was no trick. His stomach twisted. The idea was strange, impossible. She was alien. He was human. Could he really survive on something so unnatural? He shook his head, muttering, "That's insane." But Lyra reached out with trembling hands, touching his arm lightly. "If you don't, you die," she whispered. "And if you die, I die too. We need each other." Daniel pulled back, breathing hard. The soldier in him resisted. Pride screamed at him to refuse. He was human, a fighter. He had survived war, pain, and blood, but this was different. His throat burned with thirst. His chest felt tight, his body weak. He knew the truth. Without something, anything, his body would soon fail. He stared into the darkness, fighting an invisible war inside himself. Then he looked back at Lyra. Her glowing eyes were soft, filled not with victory but with desperation. She was offering him life, not as an enemy, but as a companion. His voice was low, broken. "Why would you help me like this?" Her lips curved into the faintest tired smile. "Because you saved me." When stones fell. Enemy does not do that, only friend. The word friend echoed in Daniel's heart. In this dark, broken place, friendship was stronger than war. Slowly, he nodded. "All right," he whispered. "I'll trust you." Lyra closed her eyes briefly as if gathering courage. Then she shifted closer, her movements weak but steady. She guided him with care, her body trembling as she offered what she had. The moment was strange, filled with silence and tension. Daniel's pride battled his need for survival, but the warmth that touched his lips was real. Life hidden in the most unexpected form. The first taste was unlike anything he had known. Rich, strange, yet soothing. His body reacted instantly, drinking in the strength it needed. Warmth spread through him, easing the sharp ache in his stomach, calming the burning in his throat. Daniel's eyes closed. For the first time in days, he felt alive. When it ended, he leaned back, breathing heavily. His cheeks burned with shame, but also with relief. He looked at Lyra, who lay weak against the wall, her chest rising and falling quickly. Neither spoke for a long moment. The silence was not empty anymore. It carried something fragile. Trust. Daniel finally broke it. "You just saved my life." Lyra's glowing eyes met his. "No, we save each other." The soldier felt something shift inside him. She was no longer just an alien, no longer just an enemy. She was his lifeline. But even as warmth filled his body, a dark thought rose in his mind. How long could this last? How much could she give before her strength faded too? The answer was uncertain, but one thing was clear. Their bond had changed forever. In the distance, a faint scratching echoed through the rubble. Daniel's head snapped up, heart racing. He gripped his broken knife, listening. The sound grew louder, closer. He exchanged a glance with Lyra. Both knew the truth. Their survival had only just begun, and something else was waiting in the shadows. The silence after the strange moment between Daniel and Lyra stretched like an endless tunnel. The human soldier leaned back against the cracked wall, his chest rising and falling slowly. Warmth still spread inside his body, fighting the weakness that had nearly ended him. He could feel his strength returning bit by bit, but shame and confusion battled in his mind. Across from him, Lyra sat quietly, her silver hair falling over her face, hiding her glowing eyes. She looked exhausted but not afraid. In fact, she looked calmer than before, as if a decision had been made and accepted. Daniel ran a hand through his dusty hair. He had never imagined his survival would depend on an alien girl. On the battlefield, he had fought against her kind, seen them as monsters. But here, in the silence of the broken bunker, she was no monster. She was fragile, tired, and yet strong enough to share life with him. Hours passed, and Daniel noticed something new. His body, though still weak, no longer shook with hunger. His head was clearer, his breath steadier. He realized he could move again, though his injured leg still burned with pain. Lyra noticed, too. She gave a faint smile, a small but genuine expression. "Stronger," she whispered in broken human tongue. Daniel nodded slowly. "Yes, stronger. Thanks to you." For the first time since the bunker collapsed, he felt gratitude. He owed her his life, and that truth settled heavy on his heart. To pass the time, they began to speak more. At first, the words were clumsy, broken by language barriers, but slowly, with gestures and patience, they understood each other. Daniel told her about the ocean, vast and endless, waves crashing under the sun. Lyra's glowing eyes widened in wonder. She had never seen such a place. In return, Lyra told him about the singing mountains of her homeworld, where winds carried melodies through crystal peaks. Her voice grew soft and distant, as if she could still hear those songs in her memory. Listening to her, Daniel felt something stir inside him. A strange comfort, a reminder that the galaxy was not only war and hatred. There was beauty too, even in the worlds of those once called enemies. But survival was still fragile. Daniel knew he could not depend on her gift forever. She was weakening too, and every time she helped him, her strength faded further. He could see it in her trembling hands, in the way her glowing eyes dimmed afterward. One night, as dust drifted like ash in the air, Daniel spoke seriously. "You can't keep giving like this. You'll die." Lyra looked at him, calm but firm. "If you die, I die too. We share fate." Her words struck him deeply. She was right. They were tied together now. If one fell, the other would follow. Daniel sighed, rubbing his forehead. "Then we have to find another way. Maybe we can dig out. Maybe there's a path we haven't seen." They searched the bunker together, crawling through cracks and lifting stones. Daniel's injured leg slowed him down, but Lyra's smaller frame allowed her to squeeze into tighter spaces. Every time the ceiling groaned, they froze, terrified of another collapse. But hope pushed them forward. Hours of effort gave them nothing but scraped hands and bleeding fingers. The bunker remained their prison. Exhausted, they returned to their corner. Daniel's frustration boiled over. He slammed his fist against the wall, pain shooting up his arm. "We're going to die here," he shouted. Lyra flinched but did not turn away. She reached out, placing her small hand on his arm. "No," she said softly. "We live together." Her touch calmed him more than he expected. He looked into her glowing eyes, and for the first time, he saw not just survival but a bond forming. They were more than strangers now, more than enemies. That night when Daniel closed his eyes, he did not feel alone. He felt her presence close by, a fragile shield against despair. But the bunker was not silent for long. A scratching noise returned, faint but steady. Daniel opened his eyes, his hand instantly reaching for the broken knife. Lyra sat up too, her glowing eyes wide. The sound came from deep within the rubble, moving slowly, as if something was crawling toward them. Daniel raised a finger to his lips, signaling silence. Lyra nodded, clutching the empty metal case she had kept with her. The scratching grew louder. Then a low growl echoed through the darkness, shaking their hearts. It was not human. It was not friendly. Daniel whispered, "We're not alone." Lyra's hand tightened on his arm. Fear glowed in her eyes, but behind it was trust. She looked at him, silently saying what words could not. Whatever came next, they would face it together. The bond was sealed, not by choice, but by survival. Two lives, once enemies, now one fate. In the cold, dark bunker, trust was their only weapon. And soon they would need it more than ever. The scratching in the dark grew louder. Daniel gripped the broken knife tighter, his eyes fixed on the shadows. The weak beam of his light flickered across the rubble, but nothing moved. The bunker was filled with silence again, yet both he and Lyra knew something was there. Lyra's glowing eyes darted around, sharp with fear. She leaned close to Daniel and whispered, "Not human. Not mine." Her voice trembled. Daniel nodded, his jaw tight. "Then what is it?" he asked, though he already knew he would not like the answer. The sound returned, this time from the ceiling. Dust rained down in fine streams. The walls groaned under invisible weight. Then a low hiss echoed through the chamber, chilling the air. Daniel's training told him the truth. They were trapped with something dangerous. A creature drawn by the collapse hiding in the ruins, and now it was hunting them. Lyra pressed against the wall, her thin body shaking. Daniel placed his hand on her shoulder, steadying her. "Stay quiet," he whispered. "Stay close." They sat in tense silence, waiting. Every second stretched into eternity. Then from the far corner of the bunker, two faint eyes glowed back at them. Daniel's breath caught. The creature was real. It crept into the beam of his flickering light, a twisted shape low to the ground with long arms dragging across the stone. Its skin glistened like oil, and its teeth shone sharp in the dark. A survivor of the collapse, but not like them. It had thrived in shadows, feeding on the ruins. Lyra's hand gripped Daniel's arm. "Crawler," she whispered in her language, the word heavy with dread. The creature hissed again, crawling closer, its claws scraping metal. Daniel raised his knife, though it felt useless against something so fast, so alien. His heart pounded in his chest, but he forced himself to stay calm. "We need a plan," he muttered. Lyra's glowing eyes darted to the broken metal beams lying near them. She pointed quickly, whispering, "Trap." "We trap," Daniel understood. It was dangerous, but it was the only chance. If they tried to fight directly, the crawler would tear them apart. He nodded. "On my signal." The creature crawled closer, its body twisting unnaturally, bones cracking with every movement. Its hiss turned into a growl, echoing through the bunker like a beast from nightmares. Daniel positioned himself between it and Lyra, his knife raised, his breath steady. "Now," he shouted. With all his strength, Daniel hurled a loose stone toward the far corner. The sound echoed, and the crawler lunged toward it, distracted. At the same moment, Lyra pulled the broken metal beam forward, slamming it against another piece of rubble. The crash was loud enough to shake the chamber. The creature whipped back, enraged. It lunged at them, claws flashing. Daniel pushed Lyra aside and swung his knife, slashing across its face. The blade barely cut its thick skin, but the creature screamed in fury. It struck back, claws raking Daniel's arm. Pain shot through him, but he refused to let go of the knife. Blood ran down his sleeve, hot and fast. "Lyra, now!" he shouted. The alien girl grabbed another piece of sharp metal and swung it with desperate strength. The jagged edge tore across the creature's leg, making it stumble. Daniel seized the moment, slamming his weight against the broken wall. Stones tumbled down, crashing onto the crawler's back. The creature shrieked, trapped under the heavy rubble. Its claws thrashed, scraping stone, but it could not break free. Daniel fell back, gasping for breath, blood dripping from his arm. Lyra crawled to his side, her glowing eyes wide with fear and relief. "You hurt," she whispered, pressing her hands against his wound. Daniel gritted his teeth, nodding. "It's nothing. I'm alive. That's what matters." But as he looked at the thrashing creature pinned under stone, he knew the danger was far from over. More could be out there. The bunker was not just a tomb. It was a hunting ground. Lyra's hands trembled as she tried to stop his bleeding. Her face was pale, her body weak. Daniel looked at her, realizing she was giving too much already. She had kept him alive when he should have been dead, and now she was trying again. He caught her hands gently. "Don't," he whispered. "Save your strength." Her glowing eyes filled with stubborn fire. "We survive together," she said firmly, her broken words carrying more power than any weapon. Daniel felt something stir deep in his chest. The bond between them was no longer just survival. It was trust, built in blood, pain, and sacrifice. The crawler's scream slowly died as the rubble crushed the last of its strength. The silence that followed was thick, but it was not empty. It was filled with their heavy breaths, their pounding hearts, and the truth. They had faced death together and lived. Daniel leaned against the wall, exhausted but alive. He looked at Lyra, who sat close beside him, her silver hair glowing faintly in the weak light. "You saved me again," he said softly. Lyra shook her head. "No, we save each other." For the first time, Daniel allowed a faint smile to cross his face. In this dark, ruined place, they had found something stronger than fear. A bond no war could break, but deep inside he knew this was only the beginning. The hidden danger was not just the creature. It was the endless dark, the hunger that would return, the broken world above, and together, they would have to face it all. The bunker was silent again, but silence no longer felt safe. Daniel sat with his back against the wall, his arm bleeding from the crawler's claws. Lyra had torn a strip of cloth from her clothing and wrapped it tightly around the wound. Her glowing eyes never left him, as if she feared he would vanish if she blinked. Daniel winced but forced a smile. "I'll live," he muttered, though he wasn't sure. Pain throbbed in his arm, but his soldier's will kept him steady. The crushed crawler lay half buried under the stones. Its twisted body no longer moved, yet its presence left a shadow in Daniel's mind. If one creature had survived in the ruins, others might lurk in the darkness. The thought made his stomach tighten. "They couldn't stay here. We need to move," he said firmly. Lyra tilted her head, confusion flickering across her face. "Where?" Daniel pointed toward a narrow crack in the far wall. During their desperate fight, he had noticed faint light spilling through it, weak but real. "There," he said. "Maybe it leads out." Lyra crawled toward the crack, her silver hair trailing across the dust. She pressed her glowing eyes close, peering through. A faint breeze brushed against her face. Her lips parted. "Air," she whispered. Hope flickered inside Daniel. Fresh air meant an opening, maybe even the surface. Freedom was close, but freedom demanded risk. He dragged himself across the rubble, his injured leg slowing him down. The crack was small, just wide enough for Lyra to slip through, but too narrow for him. He touched the wall, feeling the rough stone. "We can make it bigger," he said. Lyra's glowing eyes narrowed with determination. Together, they began pulling at loose stones, their weak bodies straining with every movement. Dust filled the air, scratching their throats. The ceiling groaned dangerously, as if warning them to stop. But they kept going. Every stone they moved revealed more light. A pale glow spread into the bunker, chasing away the endless dark. Daniel felt his heart race. After days of despair, the sky might be within reach, but hope came with danger. The noise of their digging echoed through the ruins, and soon another sound answered. The distant hiss of more crawlers. Lyra froze, her hands trembling. "They come," she whispered. Daniel gritted his teeth. "Then we finish fast." He slammed his shoulder against the wall, ignoring the pain in his arm. Stones cracked and shifted. Lyra pulled smaller pieces free, her fragile body shaking with effort. The opening widened slowly, but the hissing grew louder. Then from the shadows, the first crawler appeared. Its glowing eyes locked onto them, its claws scraping stone as it moved closer. Behind it, more shadows stirred. Daniel shoved Lyra toward the opening. "Go," he shouted. She shook her head, refusing. "Not without you." "Don't argue," he barked, his soldier's voice sharp. "You're smaller. You can fit through first. I'll hold them off." Lyra's glowing eyes filled with fear, but also with fire. She hesitated only a moment before crawling into the crack, squeezing her body through the narrow space. Her silver hair disappeared into the light. Daniel turned back to face the crawlers. His knife felt small in his hand, but his resolve was iron. He would not die cowering. If his death bought her freedom, then it was worth it. The first crawler lunged. Daniel swung his knife, slashing across its face. The creature screamed, but another leapt forward, claws raking his side. Pain burned, but he stood firm, striking again and again. "Daniel!" Lyra's voice echoed from the other side of the crack. "Come." He looked back, seeing her small hand reaching through the gap. The light from outside glowed behind her. Hope called him. With one last surge of strength, Daniel rammed his shoulder into the wall. Stones cracked, the opening widening enough for him to push through. But the crawlers were on him. One claw tore across his back, another snapped at his leg. Gritting his teeth, Daniel stabbed with all his strength, driving the broken blade into the crawler's throat. It shrieked and fell, buying him a heartbeat of time. "Now!" he growled, dragging himself toward the light. Lyra grabbed his arm, pulling with desperate strength. "Don't let go," she cried. With a final heave, Daniel forced his body through the crack. Stones tore his skin, but he didn't stop. The crawlers lunged, claws snapping inches away, but then he was out. Fresh air filled his lungs. The bunker's darkness fell behind them. Daniel lay on the rocky ground, gasping for breath, the pale sky above filling his vision. For the first time in days, he saw freedom. Lyra knelt beside him, her glowing eyes wet with tears. She touched his face gently. "Alive," she whispered. Daniel smiled faintly, his chest rising and falling. Alive. Together. But even as relief washed over them, his soldier's instincts warned him. The ruins stretched endlessly around them, broken and scarred by war. And somewhere in the shadows, more dangers waited. They had escaped the bunker, but the fight for survival was far from over. The sky above was pale and broken. Smoke still rose from the ruins of battle, curling into the air like black scars. Daniel lay on the rocky ground, his chest heaving as fresh air filled his lungs. For days he had breathed only dust and darkness. Now the open sky felt like a miracle. Beside him, Lyra knelt with trembling hands pressed against his chest, as if making sure his heart still beat. Her glowing eyes shimmered with tears. She whispered in her soft, broken voice, "We live, we escape." Daniel gave a faint smile, though his body screamed with pain. His arm bled, his leg burned, and his back throbbed where the crawler's claws had torn into him. But none of it mattered. He was alive, and so was she. The ruins around them stretched endlessly, shattered by fire and war. Broken ships lay half buried in the earth. Craters gaped open like wounds. No birds sang, no rivers flowed. The world was silent, a graveyard of two armies. Daniel forced himself to sit up, groaning. He looked at Lyra. Her small frame shook with exhaustion, yet her glowing eyes burned with determination. She had kept him alive when he was ready to give up. Now he felt something new inside, responsibility. He had to protect her no matter what came next. "We can't stay here," he said, his voice firm. "If more crawlers come, we're finished." Lyra nodded. "We move." Together they began walking across the ruins. Daniel leaned heavily on a broken piece of metal, using it as a crutch. Lyra stayed close, her hand sometimes brushing his arm, steadying him when he stumbled. Hours passed. The sun was weak, hidden behind smoke and clouds, but its faint light gave them hope. For the first time since the bunker collapsed, Daniel believed escape was possible. Then in the distance, a faint sound reached them, the roar of engines. Daniel froze, his soldier's instincts sharpening. He scanned the horizon, and soon a ship appeared, rising over the wreckage. It was a human rescue craft, its lights cutting through the haze. Relief surged through him, but fear quickly followed. What would happen if the rescuers saw Lyra? She was an alien, the enemy. To them, she would be nothing but a prisoner, maybe even a threat. Lyra sensed his hesitation. Her glowing eyes turned to him, filled with worry. "Your people. They hurt me," she whispered. Daniel clenched his jaw. She was right. His people would not understand. They would see only what war had taught them to see, an enemy. But to him she was no longer that. She was the reason he was breathing, the reason he had hope. The ship drew closer, dust swirling beneath its engines. Daniel gripped Lyra's hand tightly. "Stay behind me," he said. "No matter what happens, don't let go." The rescue craft landed with a roar, its ramp lowering. Armed soldiers rushed out, weapons ready. Their eyes widened when they saw Daniel, bloodied, half dead, but alive. "Sergeant Daniel!" "You're alive!" One of them shouted. Daniel nodded weakly, but when their eyes shifted to Lyra, the silence turned sharp. Guns lifted, pointed at her glowing figure. "Step away from the alien." A soldier barked. Lyra flinched, pressing closer to Daniel. Fear trembled through her small frame. Daniel raised his voice, strong despite his weakness. "No, she's with me." The soldiers hesitated, confused. "With you? She's the enemy. She saved my life." Daniel cut in, his voice sharp as steel. "Without her, I'd be dead in that bunker. She is not the enemy." "Not to me." Silence followed. The soldiers exchanged uneasy glances, their weapons still raised. Lyra's glowing eyes never left Daniel's face. She trusted him completely, even against his own people. Daniel stepped forward, placing himself between her and the guns. His injured body shook, but his voice did not. "If you want to shoot her, you shoot me too." The soldiers froze. None moved. The weight of his words settled over them like heavy stone. Finally, the commander lowered his weapon slowly. "Bring them both aboard," he said reluctantly. "We'll let High Command decide." Daniel let out a breath of relief. He turned to Lyra, squeezing her hand. "We made it," he whispered. Together they walked up the ramp. The rescue craft lifted into the air, leaving the graveyard of war behind. Inside, the soldiers kept their distance, still suspicious. But Daniel sat beside Lyra, his arm around her shoulders, shielding her from their cold stares. As the ship carried them to safety, Daniel knew their journey was far from over. Questions would rise. Trials would come. But one truth could not be erased. He and Lyra had survived together. They had broken the wall between human and alien. And maybe, just maybe, their story would spark something greater than survival. A chance for peace.